Hannah Morgan stared at the empty horizon, her father's wagon nothing but a speck disappearing into the golden prairie. The 13-year-old's legs buckled beneath her as reality sank in. He wasn't coming back. The autumn wind howled across the Kansas territory, whipping her copper hair across her tear-streaked face. She was alone, completely alone. "I'm better off without you dragging me down," were the last words Jackson Morgan had spat before shoving her from the wagon and driving away, leaving his only daughter to the mercy of the wilderness. As the distant rumble of thunder rolled across the plains, Hannah wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. The coming storm wasn't just in the skies. It was in her heart, in her bones, in the very earth beneath her feet. But something burned beneath her fear, a spark her father hadn't managed to extinguish. She would survive. She had to. What Hannah couldn't possibly know was that she wasn't as alone as she thought. From the shadow of a distant ridge, dark eyes were watching. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Hannah's knees hit the hard-packed earth as her father's wagon disappeared over the horizon. She didn't cry out, wouldn't give him the satisfaction, even if he was too far away to hear. The thin cotton dress and patched shawl did little against the October chill sweeping across the Kansas plains. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from a rage so deep it seemed to burn from within. "Stupid, useless girl," her father had growled, whiskey heavy on his breath as he'd shoved her from the wagon. Another mouth to feed, another back that won't work hard enough. 15 miles from the nearest settlement, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the small leather pouch of her mother's keepsakes hidden in her pocket, Hannah knew what waited for a girl alone on the frontier. Death, if she was lucky. Things would be far worse if she wasn't. She rose shakily to her feet, scanning her surroundings. Tall grass prairie stretched in every direction, rippling like a golden ocean under the late afternoon sun. To the west, dark clouds gathered, promising a storm before nightfall. A line of cottonwood trees marked what might be a creek to the north. To the south, rocky outcroppings jutted from the earth like the bones of some ancient beast. Hannah had learned to read the land from her mother before consumption had taken her 2 winters ago. "The prairie provides," Elizabeth Morgan had whispered in her final days, "if you know how to ask." But her mother had never taught her how to survive abandonment, how to outrun the coming storm, how to ignore the hollow ache that threatened to swallow her whole. The first fat raindrops struck her face as she started toward the creek. Water. First, then shelter. The basics of survival hadn't changed just because her world had shattered, one foot in front of the other, one breath after another. The sky darkened rapidly as she trudged through the waist-high grass, each step harder than the last. The weight of her situation pressed down on her shoulders like an iron yoke, 13 years old and cast aside. Her father had traded her mother's wedding ring for whiskey 3 days earlier. Hannah wasn't surprised he'd eventually trade away. His daughter too, though she'd expected him to sell her to some lonely settler rather than abandon her outright. "You're just like your mother," he'd snarled that morning. "All dreams and no grit. This country eats dreamers alive." The rain fell harder now, soaking through her clothes, plastering her hair to her skull. The creek had grown from a gentle stream to a churning torrent, swollen with sudden rainwater. There would be no crossing tonight. Hannah crouched beneath the largest cottonwood, its branches offering meager shelter from the downpour. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, her limbs growing numb. The thin dress clung to her skin like a death shroud. She wouldn't survive the night like this, not without fire, not without shelter. Hannah forced herself to her feet, gathering fallen branches with trembling hands. Her mother had shown her how to make fire, but everything was soaked through. Still, she had to try. She cleared a space beneath the tree where the ground remained somewhat dry and arranged the driest sticks she could find. From her pocket, she withdrew her mother's pouch, a small leather sack containing a tarnished silver locket, a smooth river stone, and most precious of all, a fire striker her mother had carried from Boston. Hannah's fingers were so cold she could barely grip the metal, but desperation drove her forward. Spark after spark fell uselessly onto the damp wood. A sob of frustration tore from her throat, echoing her mother's final, rattling breaths. The sound terrified her. It was the cry of someone giving up. "I won't die here," she whispered fiercely. "I won't give him the satisfaction." The thunder rumbled overhead, closer now, and lightning split the sky. In that brief illumination, Hannah spotted a hollow at the base of the largest cottonwood, half hidden by exposed roots. She scrambled toward it, pushing aside decades of accumulated leaves and debris. It wasn't much, barely large enough for her to curl into, but it was drier than the open ground. Hannah squeezed into the space, hugging her knees to her chest. The rain continued its assault, but less reached her here. She would survive the night. She had to. The hours passed in a blur of cold and fear. Every snapping twig became a wolf's footfall. Every rustling leaf transformed